The secondary point on this that I wanted to make, and this is somewhat of a separate video, and I'll slice this video. Federal workers that are not being paid should not work. If you want to call it a strike, whatever you want to call it, they should not be working. If these guys are playing political games like this, these guys are still getting paid. They've shut down the government. And from a logic standpoint, as long as the federal workers go in and suffer in silence, not getting paid any wages while continuing to do a job, the impetus to resolve this issue is purely conceptual. There are negative consequences for the government being shut down, fair enough. But for the people who are not getting paid, who are going literally, like, think about the number of people in this country that work paycheck to paycheck, and the cavalier attitude in which the President of the United States has decided that his border wall that is entirely unnecessary and is being done purely for political reasons is more important than them being able to feed their families. That's where we're at. Suffering in silence is not the way to go about this. And what I mean by suffering in silence is continuing to go and do a job that you're not getting paid for because of political gamesmanship by the people who are in power, by the political class. If you are ever looking for a reason for a general strike, this will be it. The government is not funding us. We're not being paid. We're not working. If that means bringing the airport down to a halt, if that means bringing the IRS to a halt, if that means bringing the parks, bring it to a halt. If you want to create a fire under their ass to get something done, going to work in silence and taking the brutality of not getting a wage while doing a job, it's not the way to do it. Lighting a fire under their ass by closing the government down. If the government is going to be shut down, let the government be shut down, and let it be shut down in real terms, not this patient that's slowly withering away. I make this argument that part of the reason that the military is able to be used in the way that it's used in this country is because only 1 or 2% of the country is in the military. Ultimately, you've severed off part of the population from what's taking place. Meaning this group that is going out and doing these missions and killing and all this other stuff are essentially doing this stuff in silence from the context of the rest of the country. The rest of the country can stand by and play their Xbox and eat their Cheerios while these people go kill and die for political policy that is no longer defense, but is essentially offense in various countries. You've created an alienation between the people who are making the decisions versus the people who are carrying those decisions out. It's like somebody get the phone. It's like, what do you mean somebody get the phone? Why don't you get the phone? It's easy for somebody to say, you go and do this, is another thing for the individual themselves to have to pull the energy out into doing it. Alienating the decisions in the political gamesmanship from the shutdown process needs to be broken. And that alienation ends the moment that the airports shut down. The moment that the IRS shuts down, the moment that the government services that people expect to get shut down. If you're looking for a reason to strike, here you are. If you're not being paid a wage, you shouldn't be going into work. If that means that aspects of the government get shut down, then aspects of the government get shut down. The idea these guys are talking about going for like a year with the government shut down should get across to you that your welfare in this is not necessarily being seen to, but this is purely political gamesmanship. And I don't mean to be a radical on this. At least I don't think I am. I mean, to me, this is somewhat of a logic thing. As long as you're going through your process and people can say, well, that job is still being done, it allows a certain amount of time. It allows a certain amount of leeway. It allows a certain amount of time. The pressure is not necessarily on them in the same way it's on them when people aren't allowed to get flights, when the TSA no longer have people coming into work because the TSA is not being funded, when the IRS is not processing tax returns because the IRS is not being funded. When that takes place week after week after week after week after week, you're talking about political pressure being put on the members in order to fix this. That's your political pressure, not continuously going in to suffer. I understand that people have bought this into these ideas of country unity and everything else. Does it look like country unity when these guys are going out there continuing to get paid themselves while simultaneously doing things that adversely affect the wages of the federal workers purely for political gamesmanship? Country unity has nothing to do with it. If you want to make this process change, stop working if you're not being paid. Let's see. Wes, this guy has become a laughingstock. When a privileged rich kid doesn't get what he wants, he throws temper tantrums. Wes, as always, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, this is bad. I don't know what goes on in Trump's circle, but there is no way this plays well outside of that circle. There's no way this pays well. Hello, jerk. Taxpayers should get a rebate after a shutdown. Not just taxpayers should get a rebate. These people shouldn't get paid. And there should be a political consequence for them shutting the government down in this way. TSA and ICE are Gestapo forces. TSA are pricks. Some of them are. Mixed feelings on TSA, but I feel you with the ICE one. Trump doesn't care as long as he gets paid. Donald Trump cares about his political reputation. What I mean is, this is, at this point, political reputation. It's like, if the Mueller investigation comes back and says, look, there was no collusion. Yes, there might have been things where they were fucking around in the country. They may go further than what I would go. I suspect that this was just a troll farm, but it wasn't necessarily a troll farm in order to try to get anybody elected. But even if he comes back and says, yes, Russia was trying to, foment something in American politics, but it's not necessarily associated with Russia. Do you honestly believe that those media organizations that spent the last 2 years looking for any and everything in order to try to show some level of collusion will repudiate the fact that they went for those last 2 or 3 years screaming about collusion that didn't exist? They wouldn't do it at all. They're not going to repudiate their previous position. Donald Trump screaming that he's going to build a wall has gotten stuck in this kind of thicket where the Democrats put him to the task on that of saying, all right, fine, build this wall. From a political standpoint, he looked at it as, there is no way for me to get this wall built without using something as leverage in order to get it built. He's right. He's right on that. The problem is he's wrong on the totality of the politics of it, because on the totality of politics, he loses on it. That's all. I hope I'm making that clear. It's not that he's getting paid. It's not that. It's that the payment in this is political. The payment in this is a certain degree of political capital that he is expending if he loses this fight. A, he's going to look like an asshole, because B, he shut the government down and all he got was a stupid t-shirt, meaning the border wall still didn't get funded. And if this goes to where I think it's going to go to, he will get broken down. It's like if you were watching a chess game and the guy loses a knight and then a rook, and then the pieces start falling away and the king is denuded, and then after a while they go after the king and it's brewed away. He is going to start losing pieces. Like, he's going to start losing support among Republicans. Just like those 5 House Republicans pulled away, there's going to be more. And it's going to get to the point where it's also in the Senate. If it gets to the point of a veto-proof majority because people are being hurt to such a degree, that's a worse outcome. Does he bail out before it gets to that point and comes to some kind of agreement or some kind of, piecemeal or pardon down deal? By the time it gets to that point, Democrats are going to negotiate on nothing, because they're going to realize they don't have to negotiate on anything, which is kind of where I think they are now. He is in a losing position. Outside of there being some kind of hand of God to save him in this, but I don't see how this is beneficial to him. He staked all of his political credibility on this one thing about building the wall. And from the standpoint of his members, or people who are supporting him who are not adversely affected by this, yeah, they may like this. Yeah, the president's taking a stand, the president's kicking ass. And even me, to some degree, admires this idea of saying, fuck all, I'm going to go to the mat. The problem is what he's going to the mat for is utterly ridiculous. And this is somewhat of a ludicrous proposition that this is enough of a reason to shut the government down, let alone declare a national emergency. The national emergency is him. If you're looking for a reason to impeach the president, shutting the government down over this nonsense seems that will be higher than any, collusion with Russia. Somebody says I'm wrong on this. I'm running for the Senate seat in Georgia. Hopefully I can come on your show. #Lions. Lions 2020 Medicare for all universal child care. Lines, if you're running for Senate for Georgia, of course you can come on my show. Anything I can do to help. Let's see. Somebody said they disagree. I disagree. I see Trump winning on this. Do you, Pat? Now, why do you see Trump winning on this, Pat? I'm curious. Jamal, I believed Christy Blasey Ford, so take what he says with a grain of salt. Yes, I agree. I believe Ford. Yeah. I don't see any reason to not believe Ford. Fact of the matter is, what reason do you have to not believe Ford? Your reasoning is purely political. You're thinking that just because of the way it came out, she's somehow wrong. I'm saying that you have a politically biased point of view that want to back up Trump even in ridiculous stuff that Trump does. And, you know, his Supreme Court pick was, you call it fruit of the tree. And on that, you wanted to back her up. Her story was perfectly plausible. The secondary people, maybe not, but not so much. John Hill, Trump is winning bigly. You're wrong, Jamal. Let's look at the polls. Let's look at the polls. Like, the polls are the closest thing to empirical evidence that you have on this. And certainly, you know, he's losing on this from an optics standpoint. The Democratic Party is usually as bold as Swiss cheese. Essentially, wet spaghetti. You pour water on them and they fall apart. That's usually the Democrat playbook. You have to ask yourself, why all of a sudden are they standing so strong on this particular issue when on every other issue with the government being shut down, they were folding, folding like wet noodles. It's because they know that the politics of this is pretty straightforward and clear. Trump loses to rationality. He loses to rationality. I have a bunch of Trump supporters. Trump is beating himself right now. That's funny and nasty. Polls today won't matter years from now. You understand that we're in the election season already. We are in the election season already. And I know you're thinking that Trump can fuck around now and it not have any effect later. He's talking about shutting the government down for months or years. It's nonsense. You guys are wrong.